Hello, fellow seekers. I hope everyone is doing well. I am going off the original path I was heading down, not unusual for me, but I'll explain a little bit why. After I had completed the Hannah Payne trial, I was going to go into the Apple River case, which is a very controversial one, and I still want to do if there is enough interest in it. But I have received requests for the Shanda Vander Ark case, which probably most of you all are familiar with, which has already gone to trial and she's been convicted. This just occurred in December. But the reason I decided to do it was this case is a little bit parallel to the Timothy Ferguson case, where the boy in the box case. And I do have a playlist of the trial for his father, Timothy, who actually has already been tried, convicted, sentenced. He's in prison right now. And wife Tracy her court date is set for July 18th, so next month, and I'll be covering that. So I give you a little bit of the background though, so it kind of helps. But basically what they did is they put their son in a box. He had some special needs, autism, probably some other things, but they used a box-like structure in their garage in Florida, where they did have a little window AC unit in there, but Timothy, he usually did not get to use it. So he was locked basically in his room. And it's a case where it's kind of similar to Shanda's, except Shanda's is like, Timothy Ferguson's case is meek, not saying it isn't horrible, and it is horrible what he did to his son. His son did survive though, but this is like Timothy Ferguson on steroids. This is hideous. So I'm going to start off by just playing a little intro. I love Benny Politan, and he breaks it down a little bit, and then I'll just continue on. But the reason I wanted to do it is because it is about, I don't know, why don't they give their kids up to another family member if they obviously detest them this much, instead of causing so much injury, pain, and in this case, unaliving this poor victim. But let me get Benny to get, it's just about, because it parallels with the Timothy Ferguson case, which I'm working on, and it's just like, I don't know, the kids, of course I love children, and this is near and dear to my heart, and I just feel like awareness is important to all of us, me included. So let's start off and hear Benny tell it.
Shanda Vander Ark had a 15-year-old son with special needs. His name was Timothy. Timothy lived with Shanda, his brother Paul, and Shanda's husband and their 7-year-old son. But prosecutors say Timothy was treated much differently than everyone else in the home. He was tortured, locked in a closet to sleep, denied food, force-fed hot sauce, and left in ice baths until he died, weighing just 69 pounds. Shanda had a history with child services when she lived in Oklahoma, but moved to Michigan, where she allegedly tortured and killed Timothy. Timothy's brother was also charged, but is cooperating with prosecutors and agreed to testify against his mother, which he did.
Where did he actually sleep most nights? In the closet.
Okay, so there we go. So there's the start. So there's Paul Ferguson, Timothy's older brother, and he was involved. So let me give you a little background on Miss Shanda, whom I know I allegedly had talked, no, I had not allegedly, I had actually spoken about her in another video, and I called her Pippi. But after I'm looking at her, she looks so dark. She looks, with those freaking braids, she looks like Wednesday Addams, and I'll pull up a few pictures to show you what I mean. So Wednesday, I have to keep it light, because this is a horrible case. Not the case itself, I don't want to keep that light, but I have to keep my twisted sense of humor, because I had to kind of keep going over it and over because it was so difficult, and it is disturbing. So if y'all are sensitive, just beware. But let's start off with a little background on Shanda. So she was born in March 1979, and during the time of the crime, she resided in Norton Shores, Michigan, which is west of Grand Rapids. She had lived in Oklahoma before relocating to Michigan. Initially, she lived with her husband, Adam, her son, Paul, whom you see right there. He's around 20 at the time, I think. And a younger son, around 7, whom the court refers to with just the initial G, and Shanda calls him Little Man. And that 7-year-old is the son of Adam, who is residing with them at the time. It's a little mixed up because she has other kids, other dads. You know how that goes. So she also had 3 other children who did not live with her. One of these children was named Timothy Ferguson, who is the victim in this case. And he lived with Shanda's ex-husband, who was also Paul's father. So if I have it right, Paul and Timothy are full blood brothers, have the same mother and father. So in May of 2021, Timothy moved in to Shanda's house because the dad, Shanda's ex-husband, Paul's, said he just couldn't deal with him anymore. He was having a lot of issues with him. He just couldn't get him to mind and all that. So Shanda agreed to take Timothy in. So during the trial, Shanda had claimed that Timothy had autism, ADHD, difficulty with coordination, and he didn't attend traditional schools. He was homeschooled. I think maybe he, did it like virtually on a computer. So in January of 2022, Shanda's husband, Adam, had a stroke, and he had to move out of the house. I'm assuming it was just too stressful for him. I'm not sure, but that's what happened. And they also had like an upstairs, so it was difficult for him to get up and down the stairs. So once Adam moved out of the house, that's when things went south, according to Shanda. Apparently, after Adam moved out, Timothy began displaying really bad behavior, wouldn't listen to him, and I guess allegedly was giving him all sorts of problems. And so he just, gave him an extremely hard time. So in the summer of 2022, Shanda worked as a law clerk. She had recently passed her bar exam and was working towards becoming an attorney. Imagine that. So fast forwarding to July 6, 2022, in the early morning hours, Shanda, aka Wednesday Addams, called 911 because she said her son Timothy was unresponsive. According to Shanda, Timothy had been on a hunger strike, which that later proved to be untrue. And according to Shanda, when the paramedics arrived, they discovered that Timothy was already deceased. During the police investigation, they discovered multiple disturbing things during their investigation. Number one, as you heard Vinny say, he was 69 pounds at the time of his demise. And they described him as extremely thin, literally skin and bones. And the medical examiner testified that Timothy was only 69 pounds at the time of his passing, and he should have weighed 132 pounds. So this is how horrific this situation is. It's like out of some sort of horror movie. It really is. He had no body fat, and some parts of his ligaments were detached. I mean, so he was literally falling apart. His body was breaking down. And also, according to the medical examiner, Timothy's cause of death was dehydration, malnutrition, and hypothermia. Police discovered a multitude of text messages between Shanda and Paul, which really sealed the deal because these two conspired together to torture Timothy. I have no idea why Shanda even decided to go to court, because the text messages reveal the treatment of Timothy was horrific. Why did she think that she could go to trial and it was going to be okay? That she was somehow, how do I say it, correct in her reasoning of how she treated him. But again, she is one of these people. That's one of the things. This kind of reminds me of Sarah Boone, because remember how Sarah Boone, those of you who follow her, she made straight A's and blah, blah, blah. She never gave me any problem. We're going to hear about how smart she is. She graduated and she had really good grades. She's extremely intelligent. All of this stuff. What does it matter at the end of the day when someone does despicable acts to another human, especially their own child? This is Timothy's room. We'll describe more about that later. So, yes, Paul did testify against Shanda. They both pretty much threw each other under the bus. Paul's case is a little more controversial because some consider him a victim, and I can see that in some ways. And others say, nope, he did it. He could have, he was old enough to where he could have said, nope, we're not going to do this, or go to a neighbor, ask for help. But then some say he was just too scared of her. It's hard to say. But either way, this shouldn't have even gone to court. So some of the things that they did to Timothy were he was exposed to multiple ice baths. Shanda kept food from Timothy by locking up the refrigerator, any cupboards or cabinets or pantries, anywhere where he would have access to food. His diet consisted of bread and hot sauce. And apparently the brand of hot sauce he was subjected to was extremely hot. The name of it is Elijah's Extreme Regret. And I don't know about you all, but I can't eat hot stuff. Some people love hot stuff. I can't do it. So to imagine having an empty stomach and probably not a lot to drink, and all you're given is bread and hot sauce. And probably you're so hungry at that time, you're going to gobble it up. I mean, could you imagine what that did to his stomach? And in one of the texts between Shanda and Paul. Timothy's the victim. Paul's the brother. One of the texts between Shanda and Paul, it appears Shanda had pondered the possibility of applying the hot sauce to Timothy's private parts. I could be wrong, but I think she suggested that to Paul, and that might have been one of the times he said no, he wasn't going to do it, but we'll find out when we watch the testimonies. But that's just horrific. So this was Timothy's room. It was a closet. And see, he was kind of separated from the other kids, just like Timothy Ferguson, except this is a lot worse. This was a closet under the basement stairs. It consisted of a blue tarp, as you can see there, an Amazon box, and it was said that the closet had an overwhelming stench of urine and feces because, according to, I believe it was Paul's testimony, Timothy's access to the bathroom was very limited. So he probably ended up having to go on the tarp. I think they had him in diapers, that kind of stuff. Just hideous, hideous, hideous stuff. I don't get it, guys. The house was filled with cameras, alarms, motion sensors. You know, Timothy Ferguson, I get a little bit of the Timothy Ferguson case vibe because they had cameras on the victim there, except this is even more excessive, but it was still bad over the Fergusons. But he was frequently restrained by handcuffs and zip ties. Shanda and Paul had discussions on ways to torture Timothy. One of the ways was to make him stand facing a wall for hours at a time, and I think he had to have his hands up on his head. Imagine that. He's probably already so weak from no food that you're standing there for hours and not able to move. Another thing that Shanda instructed Paul to do was to make Timothy run up and down the stairs while taunting him with pizza rolls, like barely keeping him out of his reach. And on one occasion, Shanda ordered Paul to make Timothy throw up a part of a hamburger bun Timothy had found in the trash and had consumed. Because he was so hungry, he was probably trying to find anything he could, and he found that and ate it, and Shanda told Paul to make Timothy throw it up. This is horrific. Prior to Timothy's passing, he had been in an ice bath for about 9 hours. 9 hours. That's ridiculous. Unbelievable. As I said just a minute ago, I'm sure, like myself, many of you are wanting to know why on earth Shanda even would take this to court with all the evidence, the text messages, everything that they found. I mean, they have evidence from camera footage along with the text messages. See, doesn't she resemble? There's Shanda. Looks like she's holding the hot sauce, perhaps. So, of course, as a result, both Shanda and Paul were arrested. Shanda was charged with Timothy's passing. Paul was charged in connection to mistreating Timothy, but not in connection to his passing away. And as said earlier, Paul agreed to testify against Shanda, and her trial began on December 13th, 2023. So yeah, there were mentions that Timothy was on a hunger strike at that time when they found him, and at another time, but those were never, no, that was untrue. And they both threw each other under the bus, but it was amazing how much Shanda threw her own son, Paul, under the bus. So some people say they believe that Paul was guilty in what he did, but and in some aspects, I believe it too, strongly believe he was heavily influenced. In some aspects, Paul is a victim, but then, I don't know. My question is, if she detested Timothy so much, why didn't she seek help? She had resources. I mean, if she was at the law office and if she's supposed to be so freaking intelligent, I'm sure she would have access to all kinds of things that would help her. But it leads us to think like Darrell, like Sarah Boone, like Timothy Ferguson, all these people. I don't think she believes what she did is wrong, which is why she went to court. So that's a little bit of the case. I think the best way to start this is by showing you the opening statements. Even though that's not supposed to be factual, I mean, it does give you an idea. You can sit there as if you're a jury, you're the jury or a jury or part of the jury, and listen to what the prosecution and the defense say about this. And here, the person we need to focus on the most is our victim. This is a photograph of the victim of this horrific crime, Timothy Ferguson. Look at him. Look at that. Those blue eyes, that blonde hair, that he looks like such a bright light. And this, of course, is before he became so emaciated. So crazy. But it just kills me how he was treated. And again, it's going to be controversial about Paul, but you'll hear what the judge has to say about it. Very interesting. But let's get on with the opening statements.
Mr. Roberts, you may make your opening statement.
It says the prosecution.
You want the TV angled?
No, not for
yet.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan, I want to thank you for your time and attention to these matters. We certainly had some lighthearted moments yesterday during the jury selection process, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as Mr. Johnson and I repeatedly told you yesterday, and this is not in any way an overstatement of this, the facts and circumstances here are just simply horrific. I wish that I could spare you from some of the details in this case, but I cannot. Quite simply, it is the position of the people of the state of Michigan that Shanda Vander Ark committed the crime of first-degree felony murder when, during the course of physical and mental abuse in the first degree of her child, Timothy Ferguson died. As we referenced many times yesterday, unfortunately, as part of this process, you will see some very graphic photographs. Images that will not easily leave your mind. But I don't want you to focus on just those photographs, as I repeatedly told you yesterday. I want you to look at the entire picture here. I will tell you this, the entire picture is just as horrific. The average 15-year-old male weighs 132 pounds and is 68 inches tall. At the time of his death, Timothy Ferguson was right on that average height, 68 inches tall. At the time of his death, Timothy Ferguson weighed 69 pounds. How does this happen? How does a 15-year-old child die as a result of malnutrition? How is a 15-year-old child 63 pounds under the average weight? How is a 15-year-old child in literally the 0th percentile for weight? How? The how of this begins to unfold on July 6th of 2022 when police officers from the Norton Shores Police Department are dispatched to 4788 Marshall Road in Norton Shores. The first officer on scene is there. ProMed's already on scene, and they've already found Timothy Ferguson deceased in the basement level of that home. You're going to see photographs of that home. It's a bi-level home, and Timothy Ferguson is in the basement of that home. By the time the officer arrives, Timothy Ferguson is deceased and has been deceased for some time. It's immediately obvious to ProMed, just as it is to Officer Stefanich, who you will hear from this morning, that Timothy Ferguson is severely malnourished. Now, there's another layer of mystery that is discovered the next day as it relates to the cause of death of Timothy Ferguson. And you will hear from the medical examiner that in addition to the severe malnourishment that caused his death, Timothy Ferguson also showed signs of hypothermia. How does a 15-year-old child in Michigan in July have hypothermia? The pieces of that puzzle start to unfold as the police investigation does. Officer Stefanich begins to notice, in addition to the shocking image of Timothy Ferguson, deceased, other things unusual in the home. There's leg cuffs in the basement. There's cameras everywhere. There's hot sauce in the bathroom. Upstairs in the upper level of the home, there's locks on the refrigerator and the freezer. More cameras, motion sensors, alarms, everywhere in the house. And in the basement, as if part of some demented version of Harry Potter, there's a small closet, again with an alarm on the door. Inside that closet, a blue tart just laying on the floor in a small box. That room, as officers later come to learn, is called the small room. That was Timothy Ferguson's bedroom. That's where he was forced to sleep. The leg cuffs, also for Timothy Ferguson. The cameras, also for Timothy Ferguson. To watch his every movement. His every movement monitored by his mother on those cameras. The bathroom camera. Who puts a camera in a bathroom? The bathroom camera is literally a motion tracking camera, and the officer notices as soon as he walks into the bathroom that the camera starts to follow his motion. Again, hot sauce in the bathroom. Why is there hot sauce in the bathroom? These are all questions at the time the police officers have, but they have no explanation for most of it. All they know is that Timothy Ferguson died as a result of malnutrition. As is obvious to anybody that would just see him, look at him. So Officer Stefanich starts to ask some questions. And Ms. Vander Ark says, well, he's been on a hunger strike for the last couple of weeks. He hasn't been eating. And I noticed last night he wasn't eating really good, so I made him some toast with some peanut butter, or some butter on it, and I made him eat it, and then he went to bed. And then more detectives become involved in the investigation. And more statements coming out from Ms. Vander Ark about some of the unusual things in the home. The leg cuffs. Oh, those are Paul Ferguson. Paul Ferguson is the older boy that lives in the house. He's 19 at the time. And you're going to hear from Paul Ferguson. And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're not going to like Paul Ferguson. I don't like Paul Ferguson. Paul Ferguson was a contributing factor to the death of his brother. What you will come to learn is that what Paul Ferguson was the strong arm for the defendant. When she wanted a punishment inflicted upon Timothy, she used Paul to do it. And Paul did it. And he will tell you that he did those things. And he will tell you he is remorseful about those things. As he should be. Because the mental and physical abuse that those two individuals inflicted upon Timothy Ferguson over the course of multiple months, from February of 2022 until the time of his death in July, caused his death. For all intents and purposes, Timothy Ferguson was a prisoner in his own home. He never went to a doctor. He never went to school. The only time he was allowed to leave the house was if he was being punished and he had to run up and down the stairs in the backyard where nobody could see him, or walk the dog in the backyard, again, where nobody could see him. You don't have to take my word for it. You will hear in the text messages between Paul Ferguson and Shanda Vander Ark the extent of the horrors they inflicted upon Timothy. You will hear about his every movement being monitored by motion sensors and alarms on his body, multiple alarms on his body. Cameras watching his every move, making sure he did not go upstairs without permission, making sure he did not go to the bathroom without permission. And when he went to the bathroom, he got 1 minute if he had to pee, and 2 minutes if he had to poop. Some of you might already be saying to yourself, this sounds too incredible to be true.
I mean, come on. Already thinking about motion cameras in the bathroom, and then you have a minute to pee, 2 minutes to poop. Come on. Now, I would have performance anxiety as it is. That's just horrific. You don't put a time limit on that stuff. Oh my God. What wicked, dreadful people they are.
Again, you don't have to take my word for it. You will hear the text messages. You will see right there in print, right there before your very eyes, everything that I'm telling you. His access to food denied. Locks on the freezer. Locks on the refrigerator. Alarm on the pantry door. Alarms on the door to the small room where he was forced to sleep. Now, interestingly, when we talk about that alarm on the small room, you're going to see the photographs of that alarm. When the police are there the first day, they take photographs of the scene. And as the investigation progresses, they go back the next day. Strangely, that alarm has been removed.
Ooh.
The police get the text messages and start to go through the text messages, and a broader picture begins to emerge of what happened to Timothy, especially in those final hours leading up to his death in the early morning hours of July 6th. And what they find is just as shocking as the fact that Timothy died as a result of malnutrition. For roughly the last 9 hours that Timothy Ferguson was alive, he was in an ice bath. First monitored by Paul, and then by Shanda, Timothy Ferguson was forced to lay in an ice bath for 9 hours. Already severely malnourished, already bone thin, forced to be in this bathtub. Again, first monitored by Paul, watched by Shanda from those cameras, and then by her when Paul goes to work. Timothy is too weak to even move on his own volition at that point. That's where the hypothermia comes into play. The medical examiner, puzzled at first, how can there possibly be hypothermia in a child of 15 years old at this time of year? Well, when you spend 9 hours in an ice bathtub, that's what happens. You'll see the ice maker in the home, where the ice came from for his ice baths. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. You're going to hear it all in the text messages. And Ms. Vander Ark, again, when she talks to the police, she says, well, Timothy's he's just been on a hunger strike for the last 2 weeks. And I didn't know how bad it was getting until last night, and I made him a piece of toast. It's not true. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. On July 13th, almost 3 weeks before Timothy Ferguson passes away, Paul, in a moment of clarity, in a moment of sympathy for his brother, sees his brother without his shirt on and sends his mother a picture. Now, he's already rake thin at that point. Nothing more than skin and bone. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that any rational human being looking at that photograph would say, oh my God, we have got to do something to help this child. What's Miss Vander Ark's response? Okay, give him some bread. A couple days after that, We learn what the hot sauce is for. Make sure you give him the bread with the hot sauce on it. Make sure he eats 4 slices of bread with hot sauce on it, and if he does that and waits 30 minutes, he can have some more slices without hot sauce. This is a child who is already essentially on death's door with his malnutrition. And his mother, the person responsible for his care and custody and well-being, is telling her other son to feed him hot sauce. This isn't the only reference to hot sauce. You're going to hear multiple references to it throughout those text messages. At one point, Timothy commits the horrendous crime of eating the crust of a burger. Leftover pieces of a burger. And when she finds out, what does she tell Paul Ferguson to do? Go make him throw up. Sadly, Paul does that. Go make him throw up because he ate the crust of a burger. It's difficult to wrap your mind around the level of depraved indifference shown to Timothy Ferguson. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why I will be asking you to return a verdict of guilty of a count of felony murder in the first degree and first-degree child abuse. The judge has gone over the elements of that crime, and you have them in your jury instructions, and I won't belabor the point here. But the people's position is that Shanda Vander Ark caused the death of Timothy Ferguson as a result of that malnutrition, as a result of her repeated denial of his access to food during the last months of his life. And that during the course of that time period, she was inflicting emotional, mental, and physical abuse upon him with her actions. And again, you're not going to have to take my word for it. You're going to see the text messages. You're going to hear those text messages. This afternoon, I anticipate that Lieutenant Hooksma and Detective Alm will be reading those text messages to you, one playing the part of Paul Ferguson, the other reading Ms. Vander Ark's texts. And like I said, they are shocking. They are truly shocking. Paul's testimony will be as equally shocking. And again, you don't have to like Paul Ferguson. I don't like Paul Ferguson. I hold Paul Ferguson responsible for the death of Timothy Ferguson just as I do the defendant in this case. But as we talked about in jury selection, it's not for you to decide what happens with Paul Ferguson. He's already made his choice, and he's agreed to cooperate and testify against his mother. And he will be pleading to a first-degree child abuse charge here. His sentence to be determined by Judge Case at a little later date. You don't have to like him, but I want you to listen to what he says. Because everything that he says is going to be corroborated by the physical evidence in this case, especially those text messages. He's going to tell you how Timothy Ferguson was a prisoner in that home. When the officers arrived that day, they didn't realize they were walking into a prison cell, but they were. And the horrors they uncovered are horrors not even inflicted upon prisoners of war who get the protection of the Geneva Convention. Horrors we don't inflict on prisoners here in the United States who get regular meals and access to small freedoms. Timothy had none of that. That's the how of this, ladies and gentlemen. That is the how of how Timothy Ferguson died. Now the better question, the harder question, that most of you will likely be asking yourselves is why? When I was in college, I discovered a musical group called 10,000 Maniacs. The 1987 album, In My Tribe, begins with a song called What's the Matter Here? And it was the first time I remember being aware of socially conscious lyrics for a song. It's a very powerful, very moving song. Natalie Merchant is the lead singer for the group and wrote the song. And the song is about her being a person who's witnessing what she believes to be child abuse, the physical abuse of a child in the building she lives in, and the mental abuse inflicted upon that child by the child's parents. The bridge of the song, after she hears threats made to the child by the Father has these lyrics. Answer me and take your time. What could be the awful crime he could do at so young an age? If I'm the only witness to your madness, offer me some words to balance out what I see and what I hear. These cold and lowly things that you do, I suppose you do because he belongs to you. And instead of love, you've given him these cuts and sores that don't heal with time or with age. Now, in the song, it's implied that she becomes the person who has the courage to speak up and say what's happening to this child and say, what's the matter here? She can stand up and protect the child. There was nobody that could stand up for Timothy Ferguson. There was nobody that could answer the question, what's the matter here? The defendant made sure that nobody could see Timothy Ferguson. Nobody could see what was being done to him. Can't even produce a picture on her cell phone of him in the last 6 months of his life. I don't know about the rest of you as parents, but you can go 10 photos in my photo stream on my phone without finding a picture of my kids. But nothing in the 6 months leading up to his death. What could be the awful crime he had done at so young an age? I can't answer the why for you. I don't have to answer the why for you. You will hear instructions from the judge that I don't have to prove the motive in this case. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that no why could possibly, as Natalie Merchant says in the song, no why could possibly justify the cold and lowly things done to Timothy Ferguson. All we know is that they were done. And as a result, Timothy Ferguson died without anyone there to speak up for him, without anyone to say, what's the matter here? So, ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of these very difficult proofs, I will be asking you to return a verdict of guilty, the charge of first-degree felony murder and first-degree child abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Wow, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? They're going to have all the evidence. I mean, I got to hand it to defense attorneys. I don't know why anyone would want to be, although I know that there have been many occasions, or at least some, where the person does turn out being innocent. But what about these people they know, like Shanda? They know they did it. What kind of defense can they possibly put up is my question. But we will see what he does, what he says, what he does, the defense attorney. That's some... Boy, I can only imagine how the text messages are going to read. That's going to be nuts.
Johnson, do you wish to make an opening statement at this time? I do. All right, you may proceed.
Shonda's scary looking to me. My opinion only. She's very sinister looking.
Yes. What he said, I don't have a lot to argue with that. Yup. That's what you're going to hear. All the things you're going to hear those things. Most of that evidence is not going to be controverted. All of it's going to come in almost exactly like he said it's going to come in. And at the end of the day, you're going to say, what's up? Why are we here? We're here, folks. We're here, folks. Because this case is not just terrible. It's weird. It's just strange. It goes into portions of our brains that we hope we don't have. And I say that because I'm a lawyer. I was paying attention to what Mr. Roberts says. One of the things he didn't talk about was what the statute says. And the judge read you this morning, so read you again. The exact word of the statute for this type of crime is knowing and intentional. All the things that he says that my client did, she has to know and she has to intend for either one of these charges to be filed. And you know, and if you had a recorder and you could hear his whole speech again, there's nothing about that. She knew, she intended. And you're going to be shown. Text messages. Telephone book of text messages. And they're going to be read to you. Some of the juicier parts are going to be read to you. I ask you to pay close attention to those text messages. Because when you listen to those text messages and you're paying attention, and understand, these text messages were made and created at a time nobody knew that anybody would ever read them. In other words, nobody's trying to fake what they're saying in here because they don't know anybody else is ever going to read them. So this is what they're thinking at the time. This is what's going in there. All the things that are going in there is raw and it's real and it's unedited. Go find those text messages. And what you're going to hear over and over as you listen to these messages is my client, Shanda Vander Ark, and her oldest son, Paul Ferguson, had no idea that they were hurting this boy. If you listen to those messages, they don't have a clue. And it's two of them. It's not just the one, not her and just him. At one point, he sends her the picture. At another point, she asks him, is he okay? You think? And each time, the other person reflects and they continue to go on. They don't figure out that they're hurting Tim until he's dead. That's the first time it occurs to them, hey, we got a problem here. And they get mad, and they panic, and they try to make up a story. She's going to testify. She's going to tell you what's going on. But as you listen to Paul's testimony, and as you listen to my client's testimony, neither one of them are aware of what's obvious to him and you and him and all the rest of us. We're all going to see it. How could you not see it? But listen to them. They don't. They see it. They don't see the suffering. They don't see this. They call what they're doing to him punishments, and they consider it in response to what he's doing. Over and over again, he's not going to win on this one. He's not going to get away with it. He's not going to do this. These are punishments that they feel are reasonable and are not hurting him. I have heard, and I expect Paul to take that stand and to tell you he wishes he could change everything now, and he wishes he could die for his brother now. But at the time he was doing these things, he didn't see a problem with it. In fact, Paul is the one. My client's the one. Paul wants to take it a step further. He wants to start getting physical with this boy. It's my client who tells him you're not allowed to do that. These are appropriate punishments. There's no intention. There's no intention to hurt or kill or to abuse this young man. My client will take the stand. You'll find out she's a highly intelligent person.
Here we go.
She went to law school. She passed the bar examination.
Yay.
She's in the process of trying to become licensed as this matter began.
Well, I guess that's not going to happen
She
now.
graduated cum laude in her high school, college second. I think law school is the second person on the list. She was clerking for judges. She was working and studying, and she was this close to achieving lifelong goals. Then she gets a call from her ex-husband. I'm putting Timothy out, the victim. You want him, or he's going to protective services. She takes him in. She takes him in. Send him to me. I don't want my son in the system. Send him to me. She brings him to her home.
Hate to say it, but it sounds like to me, as much as the system seems dreadful, he might have fared better with the system. I don't know. We'll never know, will we?
And then the wheels start to fall off in her life. Her husband gets seriously ill. She's now struggling with the expenses of the home and the 3 children and everything else that's going on. She's working, she's going to school, she's doing all these things. She's not sleeping. happens with her and Paul. They tend to see things that I can't, and I'm not a doctor. I don't have a doctor coming here to tell you about this stuff. All I have is Exhibit 1 or whatever it's going to be. That's going to tell you these people don't know they're hurting this kid. They love this child. They don't know. They don't see whatever's going on between them. They don't see it until it's too late. And that's what happens. There is a terrible situation. Everything he said you're going to hear, that's in line to you. But there's no intention to hurt this child. They love this child. There's no intention to abuse this child. They love this child. But they just don't see what's before their eyes and what you and I can see. They don't see it. And so they continue on a course which was not only destructive to him, but led to this hearing. They have no interest in doing this personally or in terms of their love to their child. This is something they don't know they're doing. They don't get it. And poor Tim ends up paying the ultimate price. But this isn't murder. This is not murder. This is something's wrong, but it's not murder. And we're going to ask you to find my client not guilty. Thank you. Right. Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Look at that face. She looks so sour-ish. Well, I mean, what else can he say? I don't know that there's any indication of love anyhow. Now, they think this is maybe, is he trying to say they think it was tough love? So why didn't she impose the same kind of, in quotation mark, air quotes, punishment to the 7-year-old little man, or G as they call him? Obviously, I guess she loved the other ones, but not Timothy. I mean, to me, that doesn't show love when you're hurting somebody else's brother, you know, because he has other siblings. But I don't think, I've researched a lot of the case. I don't know that there was anything in there about love. Now,
Call your first witness.
Thank you. Call Officer Stephen.
Raise your right hand. This matter now pending. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, put your hand down and grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
Officer Sean Stefanich. First name is S-H-A-W-N. Last name is S-T-E-F-A-N-I-C-H.
Thank you. Officer Stefanich, I want you to direct your attention back to July 6th of 2022. Were you working in your capacity as an officer for the City of North Shores Police Department at that time, sir?
Yes, I was.
And approximately 6:30 that morning on July 6th, were you on duty?
Yes.
And were you dispatched to an address at 4788 Marshall in the City of North Shores, County of Muskegon, State of Michigan?
Yes.
And what was the nature of the dispatch to that address at that time?
It was assist to medical. We had a report of a 15-year-old that was not breathing, and I was dispatched there to help out.
And did you then go to that location?
Yes.
And were you in full uniform, such as you're dressed today?
Yes.
Were you, when you arrived, who was actually on the scene?
Both fire and ProMed were already on scene.
All right. And I just need to stop you for just a second. Mr. Johnson and I discussed the matter this morning. There's media present, and it's my understanding that there was a minor child that was present in the home. So you understand, for purposes of testimony today, we're just going to use that minor child's initial to describe his name. I'm not talking about Timothy Ferguson. I'm talking about the minor child who goes by the initial G.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, and I cut you off there. I apologize. I just wanted to make sure that we had that taken care of. So, I think you were describing who was in the home at the time that you arrived. So please continue.
When I arrived, fire personnel were already on scene, and the two ProMed paramedics were already there. I had been, originally when I was going to the call, I was going emergency, but I was notified by dispatch that Timothy had already been declared deceased, so I stopped doing emergency response and just drove there normally. So when I got there, ProMed was there, and they said he's already been declared deceased.
And did they direct you to where Timothy was located in that house?
Yes.
Okay, can you describe the house? We're going to see some photographs in a little bit of the house, but can you describe the house just briefly for the jury, please?
It's pretty much a split level house. What happens is there's a front door. You come in the front door, and then you have steps leading to the right, which go down to the basement, and then you have steps leading up, which go up into the front, the normal living area.
So it's a bi-level home?
Yes.
And where was Timothy located then when you arrived in the home?
He was in the basement, on the floor.
Were ProMed personnel still down in the basement around him?
Yes, the one ProMed was Nicholas Mock.
And at some point then, I ask it this way. What was the next thing you did in terms of establishing what had taken place after you observed Timothy?
First I talked to the medical personnel, asked them what they did, what they saw, what had happened, and then I asked the mother what had happened prior to her calling 911.
And at that time, was the person you've identified as the mother, was she present at the scene?
Yes.
And would you recognize that person if you saw her again?
Yes.
Is she in the courtroom right now?
Yes.
Could you point her out for the record and identify what she's currently wearing?
She's wearing the dark blue blazer and ponytails. It's sitting at the defense desk.
I'd ask for reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant, Your Honor.
They will.
So you had a conversation with the defendant at that point in time, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you actually end up having two conversations with her?
Yeah, I had a couple conversations with her.
So initially, what was the purpose of your first conversation with Ms. Vander Ark?
Just to know what happened right there before 911 and kind of establish a timeline of what happened.
Do you recall what she told you in terms of a timeline of what had taken place?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She said at 5:30 she was woken up to Timothy falling out of bed. He sleeps in a bunk bed. The top shelf, or the top is the bed, and underneath is a desk.
And did you observe a bed in the basement area that matched that description?
Yes.
So she says at 5:30 he falls out of bed.
Correct.
And what does she indicate she does when he falls out of bed?
She checks on him, makes sure he's all right, helps him back up into bed, and then leaves him.
And this is about 5:30.
That's what she told me, 5:30.
And again, the time you were on scene was approximately what?
I got there at 6:48.
So this is about an hour and 15 minutes after she's describing Timothy falling out of bed and her putting him back into bed.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty fast, wouldn't y'all say?
Okay, and then what does she indicate took place?
She said about 6:30, she went back downstairs to check on Timothy and saw that he wasn't breathing.
And did she indicate that she attempted to call 911 at that point?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that the 911, your dispatch time was 6:37 that morning, is that correct?
That's
the time what's in the report.
Yeah, that's the time that they called 911, 6:37. Dispatch told me about the call at 6:38.
So within a minute or so of the 911 call, you're being dispatched as well?
Correct.
Is that standard operating procedure? If
Yes.
these types of,
Yeah.
So police, fire, and medical personnel are all dispatched?
Correct.
So 5:30 he falls out of bed, 6:30 she goes down to check on him again, and that's when 911 is called.
Yes.
Right. Now when you observed Timothy, what observations did you make about him, about his physical person, obviously other than the fact that he was deceased?
He was very malnourished.
And when you say that, what can you describe what it is?
He was just skin and bone. Skin and bone. He didn't have any muscles.
And at some point in time, we'll get into those photographs a little bit later and present those to the jury, but did you have an occasion to observe? Well, let me ask this first. How was Timothy dressed when you arrived on the scene?
He had an adult diaper on, and he had a sweatshirt on his torso.
And was he wearing any jeans?
I don't believe so. I think it was, I'm not positive, but I remember the adult diaper and then the sweatshirt because I had to lift the sweatshirt later.
Okay. And if he, well, let me just do this. These are going to be later presented to the jury judge, but for purposes of refreshing your recollection, if you could just briefly take a look at what will ultimately be People's Exhibit 33. We're not going to show that on any of the TV monitors at that point. Do you recall that photograph?
Yes.
All right. And does that refresh your recollection in terms of how Timothy Ferguson was dressed at the time that you found him?
Yeah.
And how was he dressed?
He had jeans on. But as soon as he was declared dead, I pretty much put a sheet over him.
But that picture that you just looked at, that the jury will see a little bit later, that does appear to be the condition in which you observed Timothy Ferguson when you arrived on the scene.
Yes.
And during part of that process, did you lift up that sweatshirt and see both his back and front area?
Yes.
And that was documented in the photograph?
Yes.
So your initial contact with Ms. Vander Ark was establishing a timeline in terms of what had happened to Timothy, at least that morning. In your subsequent conversations with her, did you get a little bit more information about who was living in the home and what the living situation was?
Yes.
And again, ultimately, for purposes of maintaining some anonymity here, there was a younger child in the home as well, correct?
Correct.
And that younger child's initial begins with G, correct?
Yes.
And he was approximately how old, do you recall?
I think he was around 7.
Did you actually,
I don't know for sure.
Did you actually see him inside the home?
I saw him running around, but I never spoke to him and didn't really get all the concrete information about him.
But were you able to determine that was actually a biological child of Miss Vander Ark?
I believe so. That's what I was told.
And but you did observe that child running around the home, is that
Yes.
correct? Did he appear to have any malnourishment issues or issues running around or
No,
moving?
he seemed normal.
And there was actually an older child in the home as well, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's Paul Ferguson.
Yes.
And did you actually observe him in the home as well?
Yes.
And did you observe anything in terms of his physical condition, in terms of concerns of malnourishment or inability to move, anything of that nature?
No.
And ultimately, did Ms. Vander Ark indicate to you that those were, including Timothy, those 3 boys that were in the home were her children?
Yes.
Did you establish approximately when Timothy had come to live with Ms. Vander Ark in Norton Shores?
Yes.
When did that take place?
She told me May of 2021. He had been living with the biological father in Oklahoma, and they're having problems with him or something to that effect, and so she took him in to her home there.
Did you ask her about why Timothy was wearing a diaper?
I did. Just said that he has accidents, so he was wearing a diaper.
And did you ask her about any medication that Timothy had been taking?
Yes, she said that he used to take medication for ADHD, but he stopped taking that because he started feeling better.
Now, Mr. Johnson's already alluded to it as an opening, but at some point did Ms. Vander Ark indicate to you that there had been another person that was living in the house earlier that year, in January of that year?
Yes,
Who
her
was that
husband.
person? Her husband?
Correct.
And what did she indicate happened with her husband that caused him to no longer be in the home?
He had a stroke, and because of the stroke, he couldn't climb stairs, so he could no longer live there. So he was staying with his parents.
So her husband had left the home sometime after the stroke happened in January. Was that your understanding?
That's what I was told.
And so that left her in the home with 3 boys, Paul, Timothy, and G, correct?
According to her, yes.
Did she indicate to you that there had been problems around that time with Timothy not eating?
Yes.
What did she indicate to you happened around the time of the stroke with Timothy not eating?
She said because of the stroke and some other family issues that Timothy had stopped eating for about 3 weeks.
And did she indicate to you that she got him to start eating again?
Yes. She said that she threatened to take him to the hospital, so he started eating again.
So this was taking place, she's indicating to you this was taking place around the time of the stroke happening in January, is that correct?
Correct.
And this was, at least what she was relaying to you, that this was Timothy's response to the stroke was to stop eating.
Yes.
And did she indicate there was another period of time where Timothy had stopped eating?
Yes.
What was that period of time?
She said in the last 2 weeks prior that he had stopped eating. So when this medical happened, he had for 2 weeks prior to that he had stopped eating.
So you understood that to mean that she was saying the 2 weeks leading up to his death, Timothy had stopped eating.
Correct.
And did she indicate to you that she had got him to start eating again just prior to his death?
Yes.
What did she indicate had happened?
She told me that the night before she had given him 2 pieces of toast.
So, after you speak to Ms. Vander Ark a few times there and have an observation of Paul, did you conduct an examination of the rest of that basement area of that home?
Yes.
And it said, we've described it a little bit for the jury, but if you could describe a little bit more just the downstairs area, the layout of that downstairs area.
When you go into the basement, there's like a common area, and that's where the bed was for Timothy. They had made a bedroom into the common area. Right next to that common area is a small little closet, and then off of that room is 2 more bedrooms, a bathroom, and a utility room.
And was it related to you that the 2 bedrooms belonged to Paul and to the minor child, G?
Yes.
And you said there was a bathroom in the basement as well?
Yes.
And did you observe the bathroom?
Yes.
What happened when you walked into the bathroom?
When I walked in the bathroom, there was a video camera, a motion camera that was sitting on the bathroom counter. As soon as I walked in, it turned towards me. Maybe it's motion activated or he's sensitive.
And then did it track your motion then? Or
Yeah, it followed me as I walked through the bathroom.
What did you observe about the bathroom itself?
The bathroom was very dirty. There was dirty adult diapers on the floor, and there was no shower curtain.
Did you observe anything on the counter of the bathroom that was unusual?
There was a bottle of hot sauce.
And if you recall, were there zip ties or any type of restraint located in that bathroom? If you recall.
I don't recall any of that.
As it relates to restraints, though, did you observe any other restraints in the basement area of that home?
Yes,
What did
there
you
were leg shackles in the first common room where Timothy's bed was. There was a drawer. The desk area was really cluttered, and there was like a little stack of drawers, and it was open, and in the drawer was a set of leg shackles.
And what material were those leg shackles made of?
They were regular leg shackles. I checked with my cuff key, and my cuff key was used up. They were normal leg shackles.
These were
like we would use, police would use.
And was there any padding on them? Anything that would soften that leg shackle if that was placed on them individually?
No.
Those
So
hurt.
I think you said there at the end that the shackles that would be used, like the police would use or jail uses for
Yes.
prisoners.
Correct.
What other observations did you make about the basement area?
There's cameras everywhere. There was one camera that was facing Timothy's bed, so his bed would be here, and on the opposite wall there was a camera facing his bed. In the other room, G's room, there was a camera in his room that was facing the door, like it would trying to catch people coming and going in. Then there was the camera in the bathroom, and then there was a 4th camera that was underneath Timothy's bed. When it happened, it appears that the camera was like placed down, so it was not recording anything, but it was still electrified and on.
But like the lens portion was facing down. Is that what you mean? And that was under Timothy's bed.
Yes. It was laying on top of all the junk that was there.
But just put off to the side under the bed.
Yes.
Now you talked about a closet area. Could you describe that in a little bit more detail for the jury?
The closet was right next to, it was in between the stairs and Timothy's bedroom. There was a closet there. When we opened it, there really wasn't anything in there except for a tarp and a cardboard box. But there was a sensor that was attached to the wall. And what it is it's one of those sensors that people buy for alarms. So when you open up a door, it would give an audio alarm, but it's not connected to anything. And that was on the closet door and attached to the wall.
Now, based upon all your let's talk about the upstairs area for a little bit. Could you describe that in for some detail for the jury, the upstairs portion of the bylaw?
Upstairs, I really wasn't part of that too much, but there was a common area, kitchen, and then a bathroom and bedroom.
Did you make observations of the common area of the kitchen? Or?
Not really, no, because I pretty much stayed in the basement. I was guarding the scene. I was securing the scene, make sure nobody went in and out of there.
And ultimately, was a search warrant obtained for that residence?
Yes.
And you were tasked with what at that point?
I helped search the basement.
And you kept the basement area secure from people coming and going?
Yes, made sure nobody came in or out.
All right, and did you observe while you were down there anybody, besides Timothy's body being removed, anything else being removed from the basement area?
No.
Nothing further, I think.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Officer Stefan.
Good morning.
You were dispatched to my client's home, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And once you arrived, was my client still performing CPR on Timothy?
Not when I was there, no.
Okay, but you have been informed that she had been, in fact, attempting CPR on Timothy at some point, is that correct?
That's what the paramedics told me.
Right, so you arrive on the scene, you're talking to, I've got the video from your chest camera, you arrive at the scene, you're talking to a paramedic, and is that when they tell you, well, when we found him, he's downstairs, and she's doing the CPR and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, and I also noticed from that chest cam, as you walk in, she's no longer in the basement, she's sitting on the front porch, do you remember that?
No.
Okay.
I remember she was in the stair area. There's 3 sets of stairs. I know she was in the stair area somewhere.
Okay. Well, I'll ask my next question. I've got the video up and running, so I can have you take a look at it if it's necessary. But let me ask this next question. May not even be necessary. But I'm wondering what my client's demeanor was when you arrived and when you spoke to her, as you testified, correct?
She appeared to be distraught.
Okay. Well, let's make sure. Distraught. What is distraught?
Distraught, emotional.
Okay.
I can't remember if she was crying, but she lost her son, so she was displaying emotions of distress and.
Okay. Would viewing the video allow you to remember whether or not she was crying?
Sure.
Okay. I don't even think you need the sound, but I have headphones in case you do. May I approach you on?
Did they see the tears? Usually there's no
This is,
tears.
again, you have a chest video camera on your chest. Okay. You have cameras on your chest.
Yes.
Police issue, and it's running during the entire time you're in this room.
Yes.
Okay. May I approach? You said I could. So let's see if this works, officer. This is at 12:37, and I'm just going to run a few seconds so you can see.
Mr. Johnson, can you just aim it more toward him? It's not an admitted exhibit yet, so I just want to make sure the jury doesn't see it.
Is that enough for you? Refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Given that refreshed recollection, can you remember if my client was crying or not when you saw her?
Yes, she was crying.
Okay. And you mentioned never mind, you testified to that. You also mentioned finding leg shackles in the bed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All right. Now, as I recall watching the video and reading the report, you then checked the furniture for scratches.
Correct.
Why? Explain to the jury why you checked the furniture for scratches, please.
I checked to see if the child had been chained to a bed or something like that.
Yes, because if the child had been chained to a bed, you might expect to find, if it's a wooden furniture, scratches to where the chain rubbed against the wood. Is that what you're looking for?
That is correct. I'm looking to see if there's the handcuffs are pretty hard,
Okay.
and if they were chained to a bed post or something like that, there should have been damage to that because of it.
Metal handcuffs.
Correct.
Okay. Did you discover any scratches or any damage that reflected that possibility, or at least in your mind?
No.
I have no further questions.
Okay, redirect.
A couple of brief ones. Officer Stefan, in terms of those handcuffs, you said Mr. Johnson asked you, and you said that you checked the furniture that you could see in terms of seeing if there were any scratch marks on that, and you didn't locate any. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you recall what material Timothy's bed was actually made of, though?
It was metal.
You didn't observe any scratches on that, though, did you?
No.
Okay, that's all.
Recross, Mr. Johnson.
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Officer Stefanich. You can stand down.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you. May I be excused, Mr. Roberts? Or?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Johnson, may you please be excused? Mr. Johnson?
Your Honor, I don't require Officer Stefanich to remain on the premises, but I'd like him to remain under subpoena in case we need to recall.
Okay.
Thank you. We can do that.
All right, that's fine. So, Officer Stefanich, I'm assuming, we didn't discuss it, I guess, in specific. The parties agreed to a sequestration order of witnesses, I'm assuming, Mr. Roberts?
But for my investigating officers, I don't have anybody else here,
Okay.
Judge. So
All right.
it's technically a sequestration order.
You don't want him to remain in the courtroom, though, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, so Officer Stefanich, you're still under subpoena, so I do not want you to discuss your testimony with anyone else until released from the subpoena. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
All right, you are excused. All right, Mr. Roberts, who's your next witness?
The next witness is Officer Peasky.
Will that be
Half an hour, so if you want to take a break now.
yeah, I think I was going to take a break at 10:30, but this is one of those natural breaks. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will take our morning break. Mr. Weaver will escort you back to the jury room. There's water back there. And we'll be back. Let's call it 10:30. Thank you. Witness.
Call Officer Ryan Peasky.
All right. Morning, Officer Peasky. Good morning. Please raise your right hand. This matter now pending. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
All right, you can put your hand down, grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
My name is Ryan Peasky. First name is Ryan, R-Y-A-N. Last name Peasky, P-I-E-S-K-E.
Thank you. Sir, could you state your occupation for the record, please?
I'm a police officer with the Northern Shores Police Department.
And I would like to direct your attention back to July 6th of 2022. Were you working in your capacity as a detective for the Norton Shores Police Department at that time, sir?
Yes, I was.
And on that date, on July 6th of 2022, were you dispatched to an address at 4788 Marshall in the city of Norton Shores, County of Muskegon, State of Michigan?
That is correct.
And what was the nature of the dispatch for you going to that address at the time that you were called?
I was contacted by Detective Sergeant Joel Hooksema requesting that we respond to a suspicious death investigation.
And did you go to that location?
I did, yes.
And when you arrived at the scene, and we've discussed this in the hallway, there's one individual that we are only going to refer to by initial, the initial G. But can you describe, including that person, can you describe who was present at the scene when you arrived?
There was several police officers on scene. There was Miss Vander Ark. There was G. There was Paul Ferguson, and the deceased.
And did you have an occasion then was Timothy Ferguson's body still in the premises at that time?
Yes, it was.
And did you have an occasion to observe his body at that scene at that time?
I did observe his body.
And what observations did you make about his physical person at that point in time, other than the fact that he was deceased?
That he was extremely malnourished. At least it appeared that way. Very skinny. You could see bones protruding from his body. You could see his ribs through his skin.
And did you then observe did you take an opportunity to observe the rest of the residence?
I did, yes.
And so we've already had to describe Officer Stefanich as a bi-level residence, and Timothy Ferguson's body located at the lower level of that residence. Did you have an occasion to observe the rest of the lower level at that time?
I at some point during the day I did observe the rest of the lower level. I don't know exactly where that falls in line with.
But you did at some point observe the lower.
Certainly, yes.
And specifically, did you have the occasion to observe that there were cameras in that residence?
Yes, there were several cameras throughout the lower level of the residence.
And at some point then, did you also observe the upper level of the residence? Again, not sequentially, but at some point.
Yes, I did.
Specifically related to the kitchen area, did you make some observations of the kitchen area?
Yeah, in the kitchen area there were locks on some of the cabinets in the refrigerator, the freezer.
That strike you as unusual?
Certainly, yes.
Now, ultimately, did you have an occasion then to conduct an interview with the defendant, Ms. Vander Ark?
I did later on that afternoon, yes.
Now, for the record, could you point out Ms. Vander Ark and identify what she's currently wearing if she's in the courtroom right now?
She's right there sitting in between the defense attorneys. She's wearing a black jacket. It appears, or dark blue. I can't tell.
Keep your voice up just a little bit if you can. The microphone will amplify, but not too much. So if you could just keep it up, so we need to make sure that all the jurors can hear what you're saying. So you did conduct an interview with Ms. Vander Ark at some point in time. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I would ask that the record reflect that this witness has also identified the defendant, Your Honor.
Sure.
Specifically, I wanted to direct you to portions of that. And at the time that you talked to Ms. Vander Ark, if you already had an occasion to observe what you just described in terms of the kitchen area with locks on the freezer and the refrigerator.
Yes, I observed those things prior to speaking with her.
And did you ask her about those?
I did ask her about those.
And did she indicate to you what Timothy's connection was to the locks on the freezer and the refrigerator and any other access to food?
She indicated that those locks were to prevent him from sneaking food or snacking on food that he wasn't supposed to have. That there was a pantry that was open that he had access to, but he did not have a key to those locks.
Well, wouldn't that already be a red flag if they already observed the deceased and saw that he was severely malnourished, bones sticking out, and she has locks everywhere to prevent him from getting into the food? To me, that'd be a big red flag. I mean, apparently, by the state of his appearance, it must have worked. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. I mean, you know, I always think about when juries go through these type of trials. I'm sure they suffer some PTSD looking at photographs and that kind of thing. I wouldn't even, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
But specifically, did she indicate that there was a pantry that did not have any type of lock on it?
Yes.
And did you observe that pantry?
I don't recall the pantry specifically, but...
So as it related to Timothy's access, he did not have access. She indicated to you he did not have access to the refrigerator or to the freezer.
That is correct, yes.
And did you talk to Ms. Vander Ark about the circumstances leading up to Timothy going on any type of hunger strike?
Yeah, she had indicated that he had a hunger strike that he went on in January, starting after January 3rd, that lasted maybe 18 to 19 days. And then an additional hunger strike that started approximately 2 weeks prior to us being at the home.
So, and you're there in July, so she's talking about two separate incidents where he stopped eating, is that right?
That is correct.
The first one occurring in January, the second one occurring leading up to Timothy's death.
So seriously, he's on a hunger strike. Why is everything locked? Big old red flags waving.
Yes.
And the January hunger strike, did you later come to learn that there was we'll call it what it is, a traumatic event where an individual had a stroke and was out of the home at that point in time?
Yeah, at that time, Adam Vander Ark had a stroke and could no longer live at the home. So I believe that stroke happened on January 3rd, and this happened shortly thereafter.
So Timothy's first hunger strike, she's indicating to you, took place sometime after January 3rd, after Adam had the stroke.
That is correct, yes.
And is it your understanding that Adam Vander Ark is actually the father of the minor child that we're identifying as G?
That is correct, yes.
But he's not the biological father of Timothy Ferguson or the older child, Paul Ferguson, who was also in the home.
That's also correct, yes.
So she's talking about the hunger strike, talking about the second hunger strike now that she's referring to leading up to Timothy's death. Did she indicate to you at any point in time prior to his death that she realized how serious it was getting and tried to get him to eat?
So she had indicated that not until the night prior to his death, that at that time she realized how bad it was. She had threatened to take him to the ER if he didn't eat, that he ate a piece of toast with some butter on it, or at least she saw him take a few bites of it, and then she walked away, and that he said he was done eating it, and he went downstairs for the night.
And so did she indicate how it was that he went downstairs, or what happened when he went downstairs to go to bed for that night?
That he went downstairs on his own, that she had told him good night, but he did not come back upstairs to say good night to her, that she walked down to the bottom of those stairs and said, asked for a hug, and that he had refused to give her a hug at that time.
So this is the night before he is deceased.
Wonder why.
That is correct, yes.
If she asked.
Now, did she indicate to you what happened in the morning when Timothy was discovered?
She indicated that she heard a thud in the night, that it was Timothy falling out of his bunk bed, that it happened sometime sometime in an hour that was ended with a 30, like for example 5:30. She said that she had originally thought it was 5:30, but that she had been told that it couldn't have been 5:30 because Timothy was already deceased at that time. So she then hears this, she goes downstairs to check on him, and finds that he's not breathing.
So initially there was an indication that she believed it was 5:30. I think we've had some testimony from Officer Stefnich to that effect. But based on information that she had received from ProMed, did she then indicate it wasn't 5:30, it was some point earlier in the evening, or earlier in the morning, I should say, that she went to check on Timothy?
Can I correct myself? I just said that she had found him not breathing. At that time, she didn't. He was, according to her, still breathing at that time.
Right, and that's kind of what we were getting at, is that at some point in the night, at some point in the morning, again, at the same state, at some point that morning, she checked on him because he had fallen out of bed.
Yes.
And he was responsive at that point in time, is that correct?
That's what she said, yes.
Right, and by the time she was talking to you, the 5:30 had been essentially disproven because of information she'd gotten from ProMed.
Yes.
About how long Timothy had been deceased, but she relayed to you it was some time ending in the 30.
That is correct, yes.
But he was alive and responsive at that point in time.
Yes.
Right, so then did she then indicate what happened when she discovered him from essentially the second time? Then?
Yeah, so then the second time, she had called for him in the morning. She had woke up, got ready for work, called for him. He didn't answer. That she went downstairs to check on him, found him not breathing, that her son Paul helped remove him from the top bunk of the bed onto the floor. And that's when he was found deceased.
And so she's specifically talking about removing him from the top bunk of the bed. Did you observe that bed in the basement area?
I did observe the bed in the basement, yes.
And she indicated that Paul helped her get Timothy off of the bed because he was not responsive at that point in time.
That is correct, yes.
Did you ever ask her if she had any photographs on her phone of Timothy from January, the time of the stroke, until
Yeah, I had asked her if she had photographs on her phone. She said that she would have photographs of the other kids, but not of Timothy after that January 3rd date.
But she did
Interesting.
have photos of the other boys on her phone.
That's what she said.
She said. Again, by the time you're talking to Ms. Vander Ark that day, you'd already conducted a search or aware of items that were removed from, or seized, or to be seized from that home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
One of those items was some leg shackles that we've had some testimony at from officers from Stefnich. Did you ask Ms. Vander Ark about what the leg shackles were for?
Yeah, she said that she had purchased the leg shackles from her Amazon account. I don't remember if it was a month or several months prior, that they were for her son Paul to use on a TikTok video, and that it didn't involve any use on any human being, that it was for Legos or something along the lines of that.
Okay, but the leg shackles she indicated to you were for Paul, for a TikTok video. At that point in time, we were also aware that there was a closet in the basement area that had some type of alarm on it, or some type of sensor on the door indicating that somebody was moving in and out of that closet.
Yes, yep. I asked her about the alarm on the closet. She told me that she had some sewing equipment that was in that closet that she didn't want anybody to have access to.
For sewing equipment.
For sewing equipment.
Did you observe any sewing equipment in the basement?
There was sewing equipment in the basement, but it was in the open area of the basement landing, which is where Timothy's bed was also. Well, the bunk bed was also.
So the sewing equipment was not in the closet where this alarm was on the door. Again, her statement to you would be because of the sewing equipment, that's what the alarms were for.
Yeah, the sewing equipment was not in the closet where the alarm was.
Did you have occasion to actually go into that small closet area?
Yes.
And what observations did you make about that closet area?
In that closet area, there was a blue tarp that was laid out on the floor, that it smelled like urine and feces. And that's essentially it.
You already referenced the fact that you observed multiple cameras inside the home. Did you ask Ms. Vander Ark what the purpose of those cameras were?
Yeah, I did ask about the cameras. She indicated that they were for G to watch him because he had been stripping down naked and walking around the home.
So the cameras were for G because he would strip naked and walk around?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Did you offer any explanation as to how having a camera would stop somebody from walking around naked?
Not that it would stop, but that she could tell that it was happening so that she could address it.
As part of that, then, did she relate to you, or did you come to understand that those cameras allowed her to communicate through the camera in some fashion?
Yes, she said that she was able to communicate, like two-way communication was actually available through the cameras, or some of the cameras, in which she could talk and also be heard and that she could hear what was happening.
Excuse me.
Were you also aware that there had been some hot sauce located in the downstairs bathroom of that residence?
Yes, there was a bottle of hot sauce that was located on the counter, the bathroom counter.
And what did she indicate to you was the purpose of that hot sauce?
She said that it was for food, that Timothy liked spicy food, and that it was used for food.
Did she offer any explanation why it was in the bathroom?
She did not. She said that when she last saw it, it was upstairs.
Did you, getting back to the shackles for just a moment, did you ask her if she ever used those shackles to restrain Timothy in any way?
Yeah, she indicated that she had not ever used those shackles to restrain Timothy.
Thank you, officer. No further questions.
All right. Mr. Johnson, any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may proceed.
Officer Pearson, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, did you also conduct an interview later with Paul Ferguson?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay, you did an interview with Mr. Ferguson, correct?
That is correct.
And how long after this event did you do your interview? Being at the house at this event. When you were at the house, how long afterwards?
Well, there's two separate interviews that I did with Paul Ferguson. One while we were at the home, and then one the next day at the police department.
I'm talking about, okay, that's the one the next day at the police department. You did an interview with him, took about an hour and 45 minutes, is that correct?
And you're referring, sorry.
You did an interview with him, took about an hour and 45 minutes, is that correct?
And you're referring specifically to the one at the police department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't recall the amount of time it took, but certainly it was a lengthy interview.
Okay. And the subject matter of the interview was what's going on at Paul's home, correct?
Correct, yes.
Do you remember that during the course of this interview, if at any time do you have to explain the gravity of the situation to Paul? Now, do you have to explain to him what's wrong here, what's going on here, why this is horrible, why this is terrible? You have to explain those things to Paul?
Not necessarily explain, but we did talk about the magnitude of what was happening.
And why did you do that? Why did you have to explain it to him?
That's a good question.
Was it in response to his answers to your previous questions?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to explain it.
He seemed to be minimizing. Would you say that? Minimizing how big a deal this was? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly think that would be the case.
Would you agree that he seemed to be protecting his mother?
Certainly, I agree with that.
Okay. And during the course of your interview, did you feel the need during the course of this interview to, for lack of a better term, have a come to Jesus moment with Paul, explaining him what's going on here, how serious it is?
I did have that conversation.
Okay. It was and tell me if I'm wrong, was it your impression that you needed to do that because he was minimizing what was going on, he was protecting his mom? That was the impression you got, is that correct?
I believe that's factors, and also factors are that he wasn't, I didn't believe him to be entirely truthful about what we were talking about. But
okay. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any redirect, Mr. Roberts?
I'm sorry, Judge. No redirect.
All right. Officer, you can stand down. May this witness be excused, Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Your Honor, my apologies. If I may, I've got a couple questions if I may ask them.
Okay. Any objections, Mr. Roberts? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Roberts, do you know which open exhibits these you are? Yes, sir. Six, okay. All right. Thank you. Also, when was the last time you were in my client's home?
I don't know that date specifically.
A year and a half ago.
That sounds
Okay,
like
all right. And I ask you that because you, at one point, you were asked a question if the refrigerators and the freezer and the cabinets had security locks on them. Do you remember that question?
I do remember that question.
And you recall, as I recall, your answer was yes, they did.
I said I wasn't certain about the cabinet, but
That's what I'm getting to. Can I show you photographs and that may refresh your recollection?
certainly.
Okay. I'm showing what's been marked people's proposals exhibits 9 and 6. Can you explain to the jury what those purport to be? Or what do you think that will be? What's in those photographs?
So there were,
Are we refreshing this witness's recollection, or are we referring to the exhibits themselves?
We're refreshing his recollection.
Okay, well, typically, because they're not admitted, he can review them himself. Because they're not admitted, unless...
I think we had a stipulation. Essentially, the exhibits were already admitted, Judge. So.
Okay, my understanding was there was a review of the exhibits, but there wasn't stipulated their admission yet, because Mr. Johnson didn't want to just agree to everything. But I could be wrong, Mr. Johnson. Are you agreeing to the admission of all the people's exhibits at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. We would stipulate to their admission.
Okay, all right
That's
then.
clear enough.
All right, just to make sure. All right, proceed.
Much easier for
And
everyone.
if it helps, I can pull it up on the monitor. We're going to do that anyway with the next one.
I don't need that. I just want to refresh your recollection.
All right, go ahead, Mr.
You know what those
Johnson.
pictures
Thank you.
are? I asked that question. You know what those pictures are? You have any recollection of those pictures?
yeah, these are inside of her home.
Okay. And part of the picture shows some of the cabinets in that home. Is that correct?
So I'm specifically, I think, referring to a pantry in the refrigerator in the freezer.
Okay. So,
So like, yeah, these cabinets, and then the refrigerator. But if there's a pantry, I think that's what the statement was referring to.
okay. So when you said there's a lot, if you were referring to that cabinetry. Okay. Okay. Maybe I should ask you what you were referring to. That would be kind of novel. When you answer the question, were there locks on the freezer, refrigerator, and cabinets? What were you referring to in terms of the cabinets?
That's a great question. I'm referring to a statement made by her. Is what am I off based on what I'm talking about?
Okay.
I'm looking at. I asked her about the locks. She says.
All right.
So I'm referring to what her statement was.
And so, having gone through all this whole exercise, the bottom line is you're not sure about the cabinets, the pantry being locked. Is that what you're saying?
What I can say with certainty is that there are cabinets that were unlocked. The pantry, I don't recall if there was a lock or not on the pantry.
Thank you. I go for a question.
I have a follow-up to that.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Officer, Mr. Johnson asked you if you were going off of your observations or what Ms. Vander Ark told you. I want to focus on what she told you about the pantry. Did she make a statement to you that the pantry was unlocked? In other words, there was nothing to restrict access to that pantry.
She did make that statement.
Thanks.
Any thought for that, Mr. Johnson?
No, sir.
All right. Now may this witness be excused, Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson, is this witness excused, or would you like him to remain under subpoena?
Your Honor, we are prepared to excuse this witness.
Okay. Thank you, officer. You're excused. All right.
Probably go, thank
Mr.
God.
Roberts, you can call your next witness.
My next witness is going to be Lieutenant Hooksma, and I am going to connect to the monitor now.
Okay.
Are we in D or G?
We're in D.
D?
Yep.
She looks so intense and just harsh.
Give it the monitor a little bit so this will be. Once we connect, I don't.
He's not in yet.
Okay.
It's connecting right now.
Oh, is it? Okay. If you want to angle it, I can probably hook him up. If you want to angle the TV now, I'll hook him up when he gets on. So. Okay. Raise your right hand. This matter now pending. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, put your hand down, grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
Lieutenant Joel Hooksema, Joelhoekesema.
Can the members of the jury see that okay? Would it help if we dim the lights at all, or
Dimming the lights a little bit.
dim the lights a little bit? Can you do that, Mr. Weaver?
There, that's
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Technology's actually working. Let's done as quickly as we can.
Yes,
Sir, could you state your occupation for the record, please?
I'm a patrol lieutenant with the City of Norton Shores Police Department.
You was sworn in, right?
Yes, he was. I want to make sure. Can you see it at the exhibit on?
Yes, yep, it's working, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lieutenant, I want to direct your attention back to July 6th of 2022. Were you working in capacity at that time as a detective sergeant for the City of Norton Shores Police Department?
I was.
And as detective sergeant, were you essentially the officer or the detective in charge of this investigation?
I was.
Your role as detective sergeant, is that the head of the other detectives assigned to the Norton Shores Police Department?
Correct.
And since that time, you've been promoted actually to the rank of lieutenant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So again, working back to July 6th of 2022, did you become involved in the investigation into the events that had taken place at 4788 Marshall Road in the City of Norton Shores, County of Muskegon, State of Michigan?
I did.
And did you actually go to that location?
I did.
All right, we're going to go through some photographs for the jury. For the record, these have already been stipulated to as People's Exhibits 1 through 32. They're sequential. The physical copies for the jury have the exhibit numbers on them. We'll go through them one by one for the officer so the jury can see them on the monitors. We're looking here at what is going to be People's Exhibit number 1. I'm going to lose count at some point with the exhibits. I know I will, but People's Exhibit 1, what are we looking at in that photograph, Lieutenant?
That is the home where the incident occurred.
And People's Exhibit 2?
That is looking at the front door of the home into the home.
And in that image, you can see two sets of stairs, one going up, one going down. That's the bi-level nature of this home, is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you arrived on that scene, did you go both to the upper and lower portions of that home?
I first went to the lower portion, then I did go to the upper portion.
Why did you go to it seems obvious, but why did you go to the lower portion first?
That's where the deceased was located.
But you did have the occasion to observe both the upstairs and downstairs of that home, is that correct?
Correct.
And is that substantially, some of these photographs are taken on 2 different days, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, during the course of this, did you conduct 2 separate searches of that home pursuant to the search warrant?
Yes.
And is that the reason why we have photographs from 2 different days?
That's correct.
But you have had an opportunity to review all those photographs in preparation for trial today, and would you agree that those are a fair and accurate depiction of the home as it appeared to you on both July 6th and was the second search warrant on July 7th?
It was, correct.
And that's the condition in which the home appeared at the time so that you were there on July 6th and July 7th?
Yes.
So People's Exhibit number 3, what are we looking at in that photograph?
That's the lower level of the home, what's been referred to as the common area. That's a main room in the lower level where the deceased was located.
All right, and we can see a sheet here. I know you can't necessarily see what I'm pointing at with a laser pointer, but there's a sheet on the floor on the bottom left-hand portion of that photograph. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that where the deceased was located when this photograph was taken?
Yes, he is under that sheet.
Poor baby.
And what are we looking at in this photograph?
That is the same room, just a different angle. You can still see the deceased underneath that sheet, just showing the general appearance of the room.
Right, and the sheet right here, that's the sheet covering the deceased, and this is Is this after the home is searched, or is this the condition it was in when you first observed it?
That is the condition it was in when we first arrived.
And looking on the right side of that, there is what appears to be a bunk bed there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think we have another photograph of that, but was it your understanding that was Timothy Ferguson's bed?
That is what we have been told, yes.
And what are we looking at in this image?
That is the upper bunk of that loft bed or bunk bed that we spoke of.
And that's, I believe that's another Norton Shores officer that we can see there with a mask on. And beyond that, there's what appears to be another room there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's the testimony's been thus far that there are 2 bedrooms. There's the common area, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms, and a small closet in the lower level. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you observed both of those bedrooms?
I did.
And was it your understanding that those bedrooms belonged to one to Paul Ferguson and one to the minor child, G?
That's correct.
And so we're looking at the top bunk and looking towards one of those bedrooms. Is that correct?
That is correct. That would be G's bedroom.
All right. That's, I believe that's another Norton Shores officer that we can see there with a mask on. And beyond that, there's what appears to be another room there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's the testimony's been thus far that there are 2 bedrooms. There's the common area, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms, and a small closet in the lower level. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you observed both of those bedrooms?
I did.
And was it your understanding that those bedrooms belonged to one to Paul Ferguson and one to the minor child, G?
That's correct.
And so we're looking at the top bunk and looking towards one of those bedrooms. Is that correct?
That is correct. That would be G's bedroom.
All right, and what are we looking at in this next photograph?
That is the upper level of the home, the kitchen.
And again, looking at this photograph, is this taken prior to any search actually taking place?
No, this was the scene of the home as we found it.
So the items all strewn about are not, you see on television, police officers going in and emptying drawers and throwing stuff around. Did any of that occur prior to this photograph being taken?
No, we don't operate that way. We take care of the property that we're searching.
There's going to be a better view of it, but on the extreme right side of that photograph is what appears to be a refrigerator. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you can see, we'll get to it in it's in the next photograph anyway. Here, are we looking at another view of that photograph?
It is another view of that refrigerator.
And so that's a bottom freezer, so a refrigerator where the refrigerator is on top and the freezer portion is on the bottom. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there appears to be a lock on the bottom portion of that, or 2 locks there actually, but one lock with a front connection point on that freezer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is this the upper portion, the refrigerator portion?
Yes.
All right, and that also appears to be a lock as well with a keyhole, correct?
Yep. Correct.
And is that just a wider shot of, so you can see both the upper and lower portion of that refrigerator?
That's correct.
There's a door slightly ajar there. Where does that door go to?
That's what's been referred to as the pantry.
And what are we looking at in this photograph?
Another view of the kitchen area. You can see the stairs leading down to the main entrance, as well as a chest freezer.
And next to the freezer, it appears to be a coat rack. Is that right?
Yes.
And there's a large white tub there. Do you recall what was located in that tub?
I believe it was dog food.
So those are the stairs the stair rail we can see there. Those are the stairs that come up from the front door.
Yes.
And immediately then to your right, as you come up those stairs, is that door to the pantry, correct?
Correct.
And what are we looking at in that image?
That's the chest freezer that we just had looked at with the lock on it, the black lock.
And what are we looking at in this image?
There's a photograph of the inside of the refrigerator and portions of the freezer.
And by all accounts, it looks like there's quite a healthy amount of food contained in that portion of the refrigerator. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
Condiments on the door, milk on the door, other items, pickles, more mayonnaise, lots of items inside that refrigerator.
Very well stocked.
And is that the freezer drawer portion?
That is the freezer.
And you can see pizza rolls, some type of frozen mac and cheese, a couple of boxes of frozen mac and cheese, and some type of packaged meat, as well as other items in that freezer, correct?
Yes, many options.
And what are we looking at in this?
That's the inside of the chest freezer, showing all the food available in there.
So there's some frozen chicken, there's some desserts in there, there's some bread. all
Yes.
visible in that image.
Correct.
And again, this and the refrigerator and the freezer all had locks on them, correct?
Correct.
And what are we looking at in this image?
That's that closet pantry door that was just to the right of the refrigerator near the stairs, and the inside of the pantry area.
And again, there's more food items in there. There's canned soup, cereal, multiple items inside that location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I think we're back downstairs now. So can you tell the jury what we're looking at in this image?
This is the first search warrant at the home. To the right of the screen, you can see the bunk bed that was designated as the deceased bunk bed, and then the small room door, the closet under the stairs.
And at the very top right portion of that door, can you describe to the jury what we're looking at there?
On the top right of the door is an alarm, which appeared to me to be activated whenever that door would be opened.
We have a close-up of that in the next image. That's the alarm sensor?
Correct. You can see the one sensor part on the door jam and the other sensor part on the door. So when the door is opened, it would trigger.
Now, let's talk for just a moment, because you referenced it just a moment ago. You said that these photographs, specifically, these two exhibits were taken during the execution of the first search warrant at the home. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that was the search warrant that was executed on July 6th, correct?
That is correct.
That's the date that Timothy Ferguson's body was located in the home.
Correct.
And following the conclusion of the execution of the search warrant and all the interviews that were taking place, was Ms. Vander Ark placed in custody at that point in time?
She was not.
Or was she free to remain in the home the night of July 6th leading into July 7th?
She was.
And what are we looking at in this next photograph?
That is the inside of the small room.
And you refer to it as a small room. Is that, throughout the course of this investigation, did you come to recognize that as being referred to as the small room by Ms. Vander Ark as well as Paul Ferguson?
That is correct.
And there's a tarp in there and a box in there. Was anything else located in this room?
That was it, just the tarp and that box.
And what was the overall physical condition of that room based on your observations at the time that you were there?
When we opened the door to that room, there was an overpowering odor of urine. Very offensive smell coming from that room.
And is this just another view of that looking down at the tarp that you'd referred to?
Correct.
And what are we looking at with this image here?
That is a view from the inside of the door. For the small room, the door is open, and that is what would be on the inside of the room.
And it appears that there's a crack in the door, is that correct?
It does.
This next image is that the other side of that door?
Correct. That would be the opposite side of the door, also noting the damage to the door, the crack.
Now, this next photograph appears to be the same area that appears in the earlier exhibit. Is that correct?
Yes.
But what's different? It's obvious, but what's different about this photograph than the earlier photograph?
The alarm for the door is missing.
Uh-huh.
And when was this photograph taken?
This photograph was taken on the July the 7th when we executed the second search warrant the next day.
Trying to hide
This was
stuff.
taken after Ms. Vander Ark was allowed to remain in the home the night after the execution of the first search warrant, correct?
That's correct.
And when you go back for the search warrant on the second day, the alarm that you had previously observed has been removed from the door.
That is correct.
And you photographed it for that reason.
Yes, I recognized that it was missing, so I photographed it.
And then working backwards, is this that same door, but just showing it without the alarm, and on the second day when you went back?
That is correct.
And what are we looking at in this image?
That is a view of the bathroom on the lower level.
And specifically on that countertop there, on the bathroom counter, there appears to be some type of camera. Is that right?
Yes, there is.
And you've heard Officer Steffen's testimony earlier today about a camera that appeared to be motion activated or following when he was in the bathroom. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that camera?
That is.
And what are we looking at there?
I had stepped further into the bathroom and took that photograph, so the vanity to the left side looking into the toilet shower area.
And Officer Steffen noted, and you can see in that photograph, is there a shower curtain on that shower?
There is no shower curtain.
And the camera is just off to the, now in this image, it's just off to on the left side of the screen, is that correct?
That's correct.
If it's motion activated, it stands to reason that a person in the shower or on the toilet, that camera could turn to track the movements in the bath and or on the toilet.
It'd certainly be in view of it, yes.
And what image are we looking at here?
This is the vanity within that lower level bathroom that we had previously looked at.
Now, if you look back, the camera is no longer in that. In the second image, was the camera taken as part of the search warrant?
It was.
They took it.
So now we're looking down at the vanity, and what, if anything, did you note in terms of the investigation here in that photograph?
Unusual items for a bathroom vanity, such as a bottle of hot sauce and a bag of zip ties.
And the hot sauce is right here, and the zip tie is right here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just keep moving for just a little bit. And what are we looking at in this photograph?
That's a close-up of the bottle of hot sauce.
Extreme Regret, Scorpion, Carolina Reaper hot sauce?
That's correct. Screaming hot.
Screaming hot, yeah. And was this taken into evidence?
It was.
Wow.
And what are we looking at in this next image?
Those would be the leg shackles that were found in the lower level of the home.
This is probably a good time. You brought some other physical exhibits with you. If we could go ahead and just have those marked at this point, and I'll let you know what to mark. What?
What items would you like out?
Let's start with the hot sauce.
Bathroom hot sauce?
Well, there's two hot. It's my understanding you have two types of hot sauce there. Is that correct?
Yeah, one that was located in the bathroom, one that was located on the kitchen floor.
We'll go ahead and mark that first hot sauce, the bathroom one, number 38.
Would you like these removed from the bags?
I think the jury can see, at least with the hot sauce one, I think we can leave that one as is. So we'll mark that one as number 38. And this is, for the record, this is the hot sauce that was removed from the bathroom vent. Correct. I'd be seconded for the
My stipulation.
Now, this next item are the shackles. We'll go ahead and mark those as number 41. These are the shackles that we can see in that photograph there.
That is correct.
And maybe this is a clumsy way to ask the question, but what type of shackles are those? What are we talking about basic material?
They are metal shackles, appear to be of the same quality and type that we would use in our employment as police officers.
And is it a handcuff key that you would typically carry open these shackles?
Yes.
Keep that with the envelope. All right, what else do we have? Second bottle of hot sauce that was recovered from the residence?
Correct. This is the hot sauce that was located on the floor of the kitchen.
Same type of hot sauce, this one located in the kitchen area, is that correct?
That's correct.
And we'll have this one marked and previously admitted as People's 39.
Zip ties.
And the zip ties are in exhibit number 40. I think they're just about done. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to look at those before we move to the... There's two more. I believe it's the second hot sauce and the zip ties making their way around. So.
I don't want to hold you up on questioning, so...
I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to look at it before we moved on anyway, gotcha, so...
Look, she's shaking her head at. You know you did it. Wednesday Addams.
Jury's had an opportunity to, I think, observe all of those there. Do you need just a moment to put those back in the bag?
Lots of crinkling going on. My goodness.
And again, for the record, those were people's exhibits. Exhibits 38 and 39 were hot sauce. Exhibit 40 was the zip ties. And exhibit 41 was the leg shackles, all previously admitted by stipulation, Judge. Moving on with our exhibits here and photographs, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So that is still in that large common room in the basement of the home, or the lower level of the home, kind of a knee wall there, and you can see a camera sitting on top of a software box, it appears.
Was that projecting out to some area in the
yeah,
common area?
that specific camera was looking at the area of Timothy's bunk bed and the door to the small room.
And this next image?
Those are some keys that were found in the home.
And there's a number of remote controls attached to those. What do those appear to be?
It was my understanding that those remote controls could activate the sensor alarms that were on the doors.
And this next image?
That's an ice maker that was in the kitchen countertop.
And the next image there?
Same ice maker, just full of ice.
Now, Lieutenant, at some point there were some cell phones seized from the residence, is that correct?
That is correct.
Including a cell phone belonging to Ms. Vander Ark?
That is correct.
And did you have an opportunity, as part of the investigation, did the Norton Shores Police Department perform an extraction of that cell phone?
Yes.
And it seems obvious, but what is the purpose of extracting information from that cell phone?
Often cell phones can contain evidence of the crime that we're investigating.
Your Honor, for this next portion, we've discussed already that Lieutenant Hooksma and Detective Ong will be reading a portion of the text messages. So I think we're prepared to do that at this point in time. This will be, for the record, this is going to be previously stipulated to being admitted as People's Exhibit number 36, and this is an excerpt of those text messages. And you've had an opportunity to review those text messages, is that correct?
I have.
And these text messages come directly from the extraction of the cell phone that was performed on Shanda Vander Ark's cell phone, is that correct?
Correct.
And you've had an opportunity to review these, and did these depict different moments in time from February to July of 2022, conversations, I should say, between Shanda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson?
That is correct.
So So if I think we only need one more chair up there, actually, is what we're going to need.
Mr. Roberts, so Detective Hooksma is going to be playing the part of the defendant, I believe you said, or is it?
No, actually, Detective Alm will be reading the defendant's portion, and Lieutenant Hooksma will be reading Paul Ferguson.
Paul Ferguson, okay. All right. Good. All right, we just need a chair. We got an extra one, I think. So just so the jury understands, usually a witness can read both parts. It can get a little confusing, obviously, because it's the same voice. So the parties have stipulated essentially that Detective Hooksma will be reading the text messages of Paul Ferguson, and Detective Alm, who is coming up as of now, is all reading the part of the defendant. I think we probably should swear her in. So Detective.
Ms. Gilmore just pointed that out. I think
Yeah.
that's probably a good idea for this portion.
All right, Detective Alm, in the matter now pending, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, put your hand down, grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
My first name is Stephanie. Stephanie. Last is Alm, ALM.
All right, you may proceed, Mr. Roberts.
Your Honor, can we get the lights on?
Certainly.
Thank you.
That help? Is that good right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, for the record, these are you'll be reading verbatim the text messages between Shanda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson, and we've also taken some lengths to make sure that you're identifying the dates and approximate times where these text messages are being sent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if we move to a different day, there's an indication there so the jury understands what days we're talking about. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. I believe you could begin.
First, rude, and second, why are his hands free? And what did he get into that he felt he needed to brush his teeth to hide it?
Sorry, I don't know he was up.
What do you mean you didn't know he was up? Has he not been...
I don't think we got a
Oh.
section, so before we get into it.
The date is 2/18/2022.
Thank you.
First, rude, and second, why are his hands free? And what did he get into that he felt he needed to brush his teeth to hide it?
Sorry, I didn't know he was up.
What do you mean you didn't know he was up? Has he not been upstairs against the wall?
No.
What? Why the heck not?
I just didn't.
What the heck has he been doing?
According to him, he's just been setting. I don't know, though. I didn't know he was awake.
Find out what he has snuck right the heck now. Because I know he has snuck stuff since you weren't doing what you were supposed to. What do you mean you didn't know he was awake? You both should have been awake at 10:30. I am not happy. You know he wasn't just sitting there. Check the brownies in the kitchen. Check everything not locked away. Check where the flipping keys have been.
I already checked everything. Correct, that concludes that section. The next date is February the 28th.
And check his breath. I can almost guarantee he's eaten something. He was chewing on something when he walked downstairs. You and I will be talking about this on a later date when we're both home.
Yes, he grabbed chips, I know.
The break there?
Yes, the next text thread starts on March the 4th at 8:59 p.m. KK.
What in the world? I bet you that
A 5. maybe 10 minutes. So I'll have you up retired in the jury room. Please rise.
I bet you it's bugging her because the truth is being read. Yep, there wasn't a change until they started reading the truth. Her own words. And again, just like all the others we have looked at, there's not tears for the victim, but for themselves, I'm sure.
All right, maybe seated. Just for purposes of the record, Mr. Roberts and Mr. Johnson had a sidebar with the court, and Mr. Johnson indicated that his client was suffering some distress, specifically a panic attack, and he asked for 5 minutes. I think that's reasonable. So at this point in time, the court is going to take a brief recess. Mr. Johnson, just please let the bailiff know when your client is well enough to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right? We're in recess.
Oh boy. Okay. Okay. I decided this was a good place to stop. I'm already at a little over 2 hours, and I hate to keep these so long, but then there's so much information to cover, and I guess if you find parts boring, you can always fast forward through or whatever, but I'm just interested in the aspects of this case, and I think we have a pretty good blueprint anyhow of it so far. The how it looks in the house, what the detectives uncovered, and now the beginning of the reading of the text messages, which has obviously put Miss Shanda, aka Wednesday, into some distress and panic attack, which I understand the truth is terrifying, isn't it? But so I did peek ahead, so they will finish reading these text messages. I don't know what happens with her, but as I fast forward ahead, I saw that the next witness on the stand is going to be Paul Ferguson, her son, who participated in this and who will be testifying against her. So you all need to come back because you don't want to miss that, and I don't either. Should be good. All right. Well, as always, thank you so much for watching, commenting, subscribing. I love you all. Be kind to one another. Be kind to you. And I'll see you the next time.